Apple used to be one of the biggest tech companies in the world, but what happened? In the past few years, Apple's technology has seemed to stagnate. But before we look at what's happening now, we have to look at the past. Apple was founded on April 1st, 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Ronald doesn't play a major role in Apple's story because he sold his shares shortly after they released the Apple I. He sold his shares for only $800, a stake that would be worth about $404 billion today. The Apple I computer itself was groundbreaking for its time. Unlike the DIY kits that dominated the era, it came with a pre-assembled motherboard, targeting individuals rather than large institutions.
And so, very rapidly, the process of the integration of personal computers into the society will be accomplished. Let me illustrate two other processes.
Apple found its first major commercial success in 1977 with the Apple II. By 1980, it had generated over $100 million in revenue, funding Apple's IPO and cementing its early dominance in personal computing. The Apple II sold well because it came fully assembled, keyboard, motherboard, and power supply, and it included a killer app, VisiCalc, essentially the Google Sheets of its time. This made the Apple II a must-have for businesses. In 1983, Apple released the Apple Lisa, introducing a revolutionary graphical user interface, or GUI. The Lisa's GUI was so advanced that it actually slowed down the computer, and the workstation's $10,000 price tag, about $30,000 today, made it unrealistic for most businesses. Additionally, the Lisa was incompatible with other PCs, limiting file sharing and software options. All of this led to its commercial failure, something Steve Jobs reportedly welcomed. While Jobs loved the concept of the Lisa, he despised the team he worked with. He felt they were just going through the motions, behaving like corporate drones rather than innovating. Jobs' obsession with aesthetics and design clashed with the Lisa's team's focus on stability and formal processes. He verbally abused team members who disagreed with him. To undermine Lisa, he poached top engineers for another project, his own Macintosh, effectively sabotaging the Lisa's future. This was a good thing though, in some ways, because in 1984, Apple released the Macintosh computer. Compared to the Lisa, it was underpowered, but it featured a simplified GUI that was intuitive for everyday users. Unlike the Lisa, the Mac targeted individuals and schools rather than businesses, and it was much cheaper at $2,495. This combination helped the Macintosh generate $174 million in revenue in its first 100 days. To us, things were looking incredibly promising for Apple, but the reality is much more complicated. The company was still relying on profits from an internally neglected Apple II, as the Macintosh sales alone were not yet sufficient to sustain growth. The sabotage of the Lisa, the weakening sales of the Macintosh, and Steve Jobs' verbal abuse of his coworkers was not helping. Steve Jobs finally crossed the line when he tried to get rid of Apple's CEO, John Sculley. Jobs had hired him from Pepsi in 1983. Sculley wanted to focus on the broader business strategy in the Apple II rather than the risky Macintoshes and all of Jobs' projects. Steve reportedly met with board members individually, trying to make John look incompetitive. Eventually, the board sided with Sculley and stripped Jobs of his operational power, essentially pushing him out of the company. Apple struggled, not finding nearly any success. The future was incredibly bleak.
After serious disagreements with Apple's CEO John Sculley, Steve left the company in 1985.
Tell us about your departure from Apple.
Oh, it was very painful. I'm not even sure I want to talk about it. What can I say? I hired the wrong guy.
That was Sculley?
Yeah. And he destroyed everything I'd spent 10 years working for. Starting with me, but that wasn't the saddest part. I would have gladly left Apple if Apple would have turned out like I'd wanted it to. He basically got on a rocket ship that was about to leave the pad, and the rocket ship left the pad, and it kind of went to his head. He got confused and thought that he built the rocket ship. And then he kind of sort of changed their trajectory so that it was inevitably going to crash into the ground.
Well, it was always
The current CEO, Tim Cook, has grown Apple greatly due to his brilliance in operational excellence, supply chains, scaling, and most of all, profitability. This is a double-edged sword. Like Scully in 1985, they both value profitability and stability above all, which limited breakthroughs and innovation. After Jobs was pushed out, Apple struggled to the brink of collapse. They had lost what made Apple special, innovation and breakthrough. They needed visionaries like Jobs to make Apple, Apple. When he brought in the iMac, iPhone, and iPod, they broke the market and put Apple at the cutting edge of technology. Apple today is in the same place when Steve Jobs was pushed out. It is established and has the technology to succeed, yet is becoming too much of a norm rather than the best tech or the most intuitive tech on the market. Every new iPhone or Mac or iPad has small incremental changes rather than the groundbreaking tech that used to come out every year when Jobs came back. We got the iPod, iPod Touch, iPod Nanos, each with huge changes when he was there, but now we get a frickin' bezel or an action button. Apple did try to become the best once again in 2024 by releasing Apple Intelligence. They didn't really take their time to properly develop the AI thoroughly though. It was slow and literally could not do shit. You could give it a voice command to turn on your hotspot or something and it would not work. Studies found that ChatGPT was actually 25% more accurate when answering questions, whereas Siri just... yeah. Other than that, Apple moved away from what they usually do. Almost all of the time, Apple makes every main part of their products themselves. Emphasis on themselves. For Apple Intelligence, Apple literally took an outside AI system, Google Gemini, and mashed it with legacy Siri. This proceeded to make it slow and buggy and inaccurate, because when has Siri ever been accurate? Another example of this is the Vision Pro. I genuinely forgot about this until I started researching for this video. What I will say is that I have used it, my friend bought it, he's kind of rich, and it is kind of the cutting edge of technology, but it's so goddamn expensive. Not just that, it's uncomfortable for long use, and it doesn't actually have any real application for the general public. The only use it has is the 5 minutes of novelty. The hype promised a new era, but it's just a niche luxury gadget, rather than something groundbreaking. Now the Vision Pro has to compete with a ton of new AR and VR glasses that have come out recently. Both Apple Intelligence and the Vision Pro illustrate the larger pattern for Apple. The company is still capable of innovating hardware, but its software and ecosystem breakthroughs are slowing, if not just bad or rushed. By prioritizing operational efficiency, stability, and profit over risk-taking and visionary thinking, Apple risks becoming a company that's technically excellent but no longer revolutionary.